Hey everyone, I'm here now to finally talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I didn't really think there'd be another Ant-Man sequel. I figured we would see Ant-Man and those characters again, but I didn't think they would make another movie there. But Quantumania was announced, I think, 2 years ago now, and we found out that Kang the Conqueror would make his big debut in the film, in a way, because technically Jonathan Majors has already been in the series before. He was in Loki. He was He Who Remains. I guess that's the version of Kang that was in that show. It was going to have one of the most powerful enemies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe go up against literally the smallest hero. And what did I think? Well, I've seen the reviews, and I gotta say, it seems like people are being a bit harsh on this movie, the critics anyway. Given that this is now, I think, the second lowest and possibly even the lowest rated of all the Marvel movies according to Rotten Tomatoes. And it's not good to use Rotten Tomatoes as a measure anyway. It's a good way to see the general consensus of critics, but overall I say stick to critics you trust, and also if you were planning on seeing the movie anyway, just go see it and decide for yourself. Honestly, I had a good enough time. I didn't love this one though. And I know this is kicking off Phase 5. People have their issues with Phase 4. Personally, I actually did like quite a few of the movies and TV shows from Phase 4, especially the ones that were more divisive. Like, I dig Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I really like Thor Love and Thunder. I know a lot of people dislike that movie, but I appreciate that those movies and all of Phase 4 had stories about the character, the main character, and a journey of some sort of growth. There was growth and an evolution within those screenplays, even though at times it became either a little bloated or were holding back, which to me has been the biggest issue with Marvel so far, especially with Phase 4. I felt like they've been holding back too much. Maybe saving things for later movies, maybe saving things for the big finale with Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. But personally, I say, who knows how long you'll be able to make these movies? There might be a time where they're not going to be financially successful anymore, and then you won't be able to make those future movies that you're saving stuff for. So do it now. I don't want to feel like things are held back anymore. I don't want to feel like there are deleted scenes that where we have no knowledge of because you'll never add them to the Blu-rays or to Disney Plus because, oh, those scenes might be used for future movies. When it comes to Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I think the only difference between those Phase 4 movies and this one is that, frankly, I didn't feel like there was a lot of a character story being told. Once the movie begins, we see Scott Lang and his daughter Cassie. We can see that there's a bit of a turbulent relationship between them both. They get along well like they did in the first two movies, but now that Scott missed 5 years of her life, it's a bit awkward. He's not used to the growth that his daughter has gone through. And it seems like the movie's really going to focus on that. But then once we get into the quantum realm, which happens very fast at the beginning of the movie, we kind of forget about that stuff. Like, we don't really focus on their relationship too much for the rest of the movie. Granted, they're together. We see that Scott's very protective of his daughter. And I think there are some great acting moments from Paul Rudd, especially when he meets Kang for the first time. But frankly, I'm not feeling this story about oh, there was time lost. Oh, I've missed out on so much, and I've also maybe moved on from my Avengers days because now I'm just writing books, and Cassie feels like her dad's not doing enough anymore, which frankly those scenes were kind of annoying because I mean, where the audience has seen Endgame. We know what Scott did in that movie, and I just felt like some of this stuff feels, I guess the point is that Cassie's meant to be out of line, but in a way it felt written very stupidly. Now, for the most part, the movie takes place in the quantum realm, so there's a lot of different visuals to see and a lot of stuff going on in the background that, frankly, I don't remember much of. It's not a very memorable looking place. This quantum realm looks a lot different from Ant-Man and the Wasp and from Endgame. It looks like a different quantum realm, which is fine, but it doesn't look too inventive either. However, we do see a lot of great creature designs. A lot of these creatures that live at the quantum realm are funny, they're interesting. There's a good mix between CG, but also some practical effects in this that look great. And I mean, a lot of people have been comparing it to Star Wars, and yeah, it's all there. I was feeling Return of the Jedi the whole time. You know, that scene where they're at Jabba's palace and there's all those different types of aliens. That's exactly what I feel like with this movie almost the entire time. And then we see Kang for the first time, and he is brought to life by the incredible talent that is Jonathan Majors. Jonathan Majors, every time he's on screen, he simply steals the show. He just has a presence and a way of saying the dialogue that it feels threatening, and he feels very good. You know what I mean? Like he seems like he's good at doing what he does. Similar to Thanos, you know, the way that the dialogue and his commanding appearance is just enough for you to kind of feel scared. For the most part, I do feel like we could have gotten a little more of Kang's backstory. That's more of a writing issue, and I guess again, like the issue that we had with the previous Phase 4 movies, it seems like Marvel is still holding back on a lot of stuff because they're saving it for later movies. I thought this was odd to do with this one, though, because we're meeting Kang and we know that he's going to be in the Kang Dynasty. I mean, there's even an end credit scene that is clearly leading up to Kang Dynasty and setting him up as the primary villain. Like, this is the multiverse saga's Thanos. However, you know, as great as the Infinity Saga was, I think some people have short-term memory because I hear a lot of people talk about, in comparison to the Multiverse Saga, that, you know, when Thanos was introduced, it was done so well, and those movies were intertwined so well. Why can't this series figure that out? And I have to say, like, one, you really should go back to, like, 'cause a lot of those movies were not as intertwined as you seem to remember. And also, I mean, most of that intertwining only happened with Phase 3. And Phase 3 is great. I thought it was the best of the phases because it was not only very well intertwined, and every movie had a specific piece to the overall story, but also those movies were very individual. Like, every movie was telling its own story and stood as its own film. Whereas I don't know if Phase 1 or Phase 2 were as strong. Now, um, Thanos. He was introduced in Guardians of the Galaxy, but not that much. I mean, he wasn't even honestly that threatening in that film, and throughout all the different cameo appearances he would make in the end credits of several movies, he only became threatening in Infinity War, like right at the beginning. And it's good. It's the best part of that movie. But you think that Marvel could maybe learn from the Infinity Saga. They're in a great position where they could actually learn from something that was done as well as the Infinity Saga and then make it better with the Multiverse Saga. I thought that was the point of having Kang show up in Quantumania. I thought that they were going to set up Kang in a stronger way at an earlier point in the story rather than what they did with Thanos in Infinity War, when, you know, you could have introduced him maybe in an earlier movie or various earlier movies and actually give him a much more threatening presence. I felt like a lot of people just understood that Thanos was threatening because, well, we read the comics. We know he's threatening. I feel like we're doing the same thing with Kang now. And Jonathan Majors is great. It's such a good actor to pick, and he's in this amazing position to do several different versions of this character throughout many different movies and TV shows. There's not many actors that are that lucky. I mean, he's really going to be able to do so many different variations of Kang, and for the two primary Kangs we've seen so far, it's great. And they're different from one another, and I'm really loving his energy. But it's just too bad that this movie, I feel, drops the ball on making him actually threatening. They go with it right away. I mean, they don't play around. He is threatening to kill Cassie unless Scott helps him dive into a deeper portion of the quantum realm, which is this device which powers his ship, and then he can escape. And apparently Janet was helping him with this ship when she was still stuck in the quantum realm, but then when she touched the ship, which is connected to Kang's mind, she realized that Kang was actually a bad guy. It's like, oh no, he's only out here to destroy timelines and universes. And granted, that's a really weird set of circumstances. It may sound ridiculous, but it's actually told very well. I think a lot of the backstory between Janet and Kang is done incredibly well. I would have loved more Kang backstory prior to him being caught in the quantum realm, but the stuff with him and Janet was actually done really well because that is a part of the story we don't know too well. We actually see a lot more of Michelle Pfeiffer in this movie because she was sort of underutilized in Ant-Man and the Wasp, which I know was the point because they were saving her. She wasn't in the movie for the majority of the runtime, but this one she's in it quite a bit more and she gets a lot of story. It's too bad that the other characters don't really have much to do then, even including Scott. Like I said, there is meant to be this story between him and Cassie, but I just don't really feel that they have much going for them. Cassie, I mean, it's kind of neat to see a different actress take on the role because, you know, we saw her as a kid in the other movies and now she's grown 5 years after the blip. Which I know that she was played by a different actress in Endgame, but after seeing this movie, I can kind of see why they decided to change the actress. Um, but at the same time, I didn't care much for the character anyway, though, because I don't feel like they were driving the story all that much. I feel like the only character that really had development was Janet, which is fine because it's like that is a character I want to see more of, but it would have been nice to see everybody kind of go somewhere. Everybody's still very funny, like the humor is still there. I thought this movie was going to maybe go a little too serious based on the trailers, but a lot of humor is still there. Like I said, especially with the different creatures we meet at the quantum realm, they all have their little quirks to them, and I thought they were all very memorable. And, you know, there's still some good banter between the main characters, but overall, I just never feel the drive with this movie. It feels like the things get going way too quick. There hardly seems to be a second act because, oh, Kang makes a deal with Scott and then immediately breaks that deal. And it's like, it just seems like by the time it's like, oh, wait, we had a deal when Scott's saying that line I was in the trailer. It's like, Jesus, like, it feels like only like 10 minutes have gone by. This feels super rushed. And then the third act, which is meant to be a battle against Kang, it feels like it goes on forever. And it's really unfortunate. It just feels very off pace. There's still some cool stuff to see. I mean, there's a moment where there's just hundreds of Scotts running around, including one in a Baskin Robbins outfit. I thought that scene was really funny and well done. There's also MODOK, which I think will be a part of the movie that will either make it or break it for some people. I think they nailed it. Like, they were going for this goofy humor with it where it's not meant to be taken seriously. Even the character who is MODOK, it's Darren, the villain from the first movie. I know a lot of people are probably thinking, well, that alone is ridiculous, but if you really just watch the setup and the way that they introduce him and the way that Darren himself acts and you compare it to the performance that was done in the first Ant-Man movie, it actually lines up really well. Like, I actually buy that this character got stuck in the quantum realm. He was on a power trip in this movie, and I think it works really well. I think the humor of MODOK is something that 9 times out of 10 it would not work, but this is the one. This is the one time where it's like, I don't know, man. I think they're playing it off pretty well. Every time he showed up, I would laugh. It got a laugh out of me. But besides one or two really neat-looking action sequences and use of digital effects, for the most part, I think the movie's a mixed bag. And I saw it a few days ago, and I haven't been thinking much about it since, which is too bad because we've just been introduced to this saga's Thanos, and I'm not thinking much of it. Which is, in comparison to the Loki finale, I thought that was great. And I thought the way things ended there, I was like, wow, I'm really looking forward to the future with this character. After this movie, I don't know how to feel because, yeah, I mean, I don't want to give spoilers away, but yeah, the point is that when we see Kang Dynasty, there's going to be different Kangs. There's going to be someone else in charge, even though it's going to be the same actor. So they still have a chance to, like, make it work. I mean, look, Guardians of the Galaxy had Thanos in it, and it doesn't ruin Thanos for the Infinity War or for later movies. Even if some people maybe thought he was threatening in that movie, I didn't think he really was. He was just meant to be almost a third-tier villain in that movie. But Guardians of the Galaxy is great. It's my favorite of the MCU and maybe my favorite Marvel movie. Quantumania is no Guardians of the Galaxy. And I think it's just because they lose a lot of character. I really feel like this one was still holding back with the villain, with the concept of the multiverse. And along with it, unlike the other movies, like, I appreciated Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I appreciate Thor: Love and Thunder. I didn't love Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, but I know a lot of people really did. And all those movies have great directors behind them. They have directors with very unique visions, and it makes those movies stand out from the rest. I said about Doctor Strange and Thor last year that those movies work really well without the MCU, like as standalone movies. If they were just released and you have no idea what the MCU is, I think people would enjoy those movies. They have a visual flair to them that makes them very enjoyable, and they have a character story. And I love Peyton Reed. I think this movie was more an issue in the writing department anyway, but I don't think this movie has that same kind of visual flair. I don't think there's anything about it that makes it stand out from other MCU movies. I don't think you could pick this one out and make people watch it and without knowing what the MCU is, and they would still enjoy it. I think they would find it to be quite a mess, and it doesn't have character behind it. It just doesn't feel like it's Ant-Man's movie. It doesn't really feel like it's Kang's movie either. So whose movie is this? Is it Bill Murray's movie? Because another thing this movie somehow accomplishes is making Bill Murray kind of lackluster. I gave this movie a very on the edge 3 out of 5. We'll see what I think on a rewatch, but yeah, this is very much a mixed. I very indifferent. I feel very indifferent about this one.